This video will cover from start to finish of the septic system I installed by myself on our new home build.
Okay, we get ready to start working on is septic. So what I've got to do is I need to raise this ground up. Got my first pile of dirt already right there. But so I've got to have my lateral lines have to be about 2 feet deep. The problem is out here is not even a foot down I start hitting rock. So what we're going to do is basically start getting loads of dirt and leveling this out. So I'm out in the cornfield right now. So I'm going to take off probably 2 to 4 over this whole field here. And I'm going to use that where the septic system's going.
To order the amount of dirt I needed would have cost me several thousands, if not $10,000. We were on 160 acres, and there's a section of cropland that we were going to take out of production for our animals. And I decided this would be a good spot to go ahead and take off the top 4 inches or so of soil, and worked up a lot of dirt through this process. It took a lot longer than I thought, but it saved me a lot of money in the long run. Again, the reason why I'm having to raise the ground level is because of the amount of rock we have on our land. There's no way I'd be able to dig the lateral lines in, not also create a major mess, but have it drain properly. So one of the methods, if you have a lateral field which is not ideal or has poor soil, is you can actually bring soil in to raise the ground level up, which is what I'm having to do here. From the house down to the end of the lateral lines, eyeballing it looked like it was maybe only going to be 30, maybe 36 inches tops. Ended up being over 4 feet, pretty much close to 5 feet. And again, that was an enormous amount of dirt. We were very lucky to have the land to be able to take that dirt from. Overall, it took several weeks to accomplish moving all the dirt between rain delays and working on the house, as well as working our day jobs.
Okay, yesterday I got a pretty good amount of dirt moved over to where I'm doing the septic at. And today I'm going to be smoothing it out.
When adding dirt to your lateral field, you want to make sure that you get it compacted really well. Here I'm driving back and forth over the soil several times in multiple directions to get it packed down as much as possible. It did rain several times, which also helps to settle the dirt.
I am trying to figure out my layout for the septic tanks here. So coming off from the house, I've got, see, the pipe goes into this bucket right here, so I measure 20 feet out so I can do 2 10-foot sticks. This line right here represents where the slab will be whenever we build the covered porch and dining room and everything. Just comes 12 feet out. So this line actually out here would be the 20-foot line. This section here would be a tank inside here. And then I got to have 3 foot around the outside for digging and backfilling. And I do 3 foot, run a pipe in between these two. This would be my second tank. My lateral field is over there.
A modern day tank typically has 2 chambers. The first chamber holds all of your sludge, and the second chamber holds your affluent before it goes out into your lateral field. I could have done a single septic tank with a divider in the middle, but in the Infiltrator series tanks, which we ended up purchasing, the divider in the middle is not of any substantial amount of material. So the solution to this was to actually get 2 tanks and then put them side by side and then plumb them together. So the first tank is 1,000 gallons, and it is 100% just for the solid, the wastes that flow into there. When that fills up, it'll flow into the second tank, which is where the affluent is. To get down to a level where I could put the tanks in, we had to go through a lot of rock. I wasn't anticipating there being this much rock. Once we got down not even 2 feet, we broke up a lot of loose rock, and then we started hitting bedrock. So I had to rent a brake on a mini excavator to get through all this rock, and it wasn't easy. It took let's see, the first day I was out there for over 8 hours, and the second day I was out there for 11 hours. So if you calculate all the time for getting equipment, things like that. It was pretty much 24 hours or 20 hours straight, I guess, of sitting on the Mini X, getting vibrated to break it up. But to get to where I needed to be, I had to have a good 2 to 3 foot clearance around the tanks in all directions, so you can get in there and maneuver them around and backfill against them. And I also had to be down deep enough that I could come off the house and have a good enough slope down into the tanks and still be able to get them covered with about 6 inches of soil. All that rock we brought out was tremendous, and you can see the pile we just hauled away there. Here I'm lining the bottom with what we call quarter chip. It's a clean rock. It settles and smooths out very well and compacts very well. So luckily there was water in the base, just groundwater that is seeped in there, which acted as its own level. And then all I had to do was maneuver the rock around until it was flush with the top of the water. Here I'm having to dig out up to the house. There were a few rocks in the way there. Luckily I had a little jackhammer that I was able to just knock those out with fairly easily. Next, it was time to actually put the tanks into the hole. One of the reasons why I bought the infiltrator tanks, being a poly tank, they're not that heavy, so it's pretty easy to maneuver them down the hole, push them around to where we need them to. Concrete tank can weigh, several tons, where these tanks I think was only about 200 pounds per tank.
Well, I thought it was hot outside. Get inside one of these black tanks. It's really hot. So here's my pipe. Here's my inlet. I gotta check, make sure I'm lined up good. And then inside here, I want to be up high if I can, because then when it goes out that side, I need to be about in the middle. I need to be on the bottom when I go out into the lateral fields. So that's the inside of the tank. It's got some supports in here, I guess, for stuff coming down from the top, pressure from the top. Here's my T's. So this T is supposed to fit an inch and a half off this lip, like that. And so the reason being is the lid cover can fit on here, and it's not going to get in the way of this sitting here. If I'm an inch and a half off of that, now you can open it up and they can look down and inspect it and all that good stuff. And I'll have one of these on the other side going out, and then one going into the next tank. So the next step is going to be to figure out what my elevation is to drill through here so that I have a good slope from the house coming in. And then I've got to knock my pipe through, which is going to be fun. I'm probably going to have to knock it through that side and then knock it back into that pipe from the inside here. And then I'll cut off what I need inside here and hook this on. So I probably have to knock that in, probably way back to here, and then knock it back. All right. Oh, this is gonna hurt my knees. So I level from the outside, and I got it to where if I'm about an inch down from the top, it'll be a perfect hole. I'll still have enough slope. So this actually, everything has just worked out great so far. I'm going to come in from the outside this way. Okay, next thing is some good old Vaseline. This is going to be really tight fitting that pipe through here. So I put some Vaseline on to lube it up so it'll slide through a little easier.
This is where having an extra set of hands would have been nice. To get this piece held up on one side and then knock it in on the other side is difficult. It keeps falling down, as you can see there. But then also, once I got it in, I had to back it back out of the tank and then into the fitting. Easier said than done. Luckily, it went pretty smooth for me. I had to kind of prop things up and get everything glued and in place, and then hope that when I was knocking it back into the pipe, it wouldn't fall out. Again, an extra set of hands would have really helped here, but sometimes you just do what you got to do.
Alright, so the lid's just sitting on there. And I put my fingers up there, so I've got a good ½ inch at least before that tightens down. And then if for some reason when I tighten it still, this top piece actually comes off to give me a little more clearance there. It was like 85 outside, it's probably 105 in here. Whew. Well, that's one done. Gotta glue this still and tap in the other tanks.
You want to make sure you're using the right kind of glue. Here I'm connecting ABS to PVC, and there is a glue for that.
So I'm trying to make sure my two sides are level here before I put this pipe in, so I can measure down the same distance on both sides. I already drilled this hole. I can make sure this one's good. So just setting the tanks in there, I'm pretty stinking level. I'm just a tick low on the left, which is actually good. I want this tank to be a little bit lower. So, I mean, it's literally like 1/8 of an inch lower. So, pretty darn good. So I'm going to measure down, drill my next hole, and then start knocking in this connector pipe.
Connecting the two tanks seemed like a pretty simple process. Ended up being a little bit difficult because I'm trying to knock the pipe from the inside of one tank all the way through to the other. It took a little bit of time to get that done, but luckily with my wife's help, it went pretty smooth.
Well, I finally got this pipe in. That was not easy to do. Natalie had to help hold it while I was trying to smack it in from the inside, where it's 100 and some degrees. Probably it's so hot in there. We had to take out that support to get it to fit in. Luckily it popped out and snapped back in good. But as you can see on my level, I've got just a little bit of slope into this secondary tank. So as this fills up, it'll naturally flow into this tank. So my goal today is to get this in, get it back filled up to the top, get my pipe supported. It's coming in over there, and then let it rain, and that should settle in everything around the side. They don't say you have to fill these tanks up. I'm going to do that anyways. So what I do is you fill them up, and then the weight of the water keeps it down. You can imagine if this is basically a big air bubble sitting in the ground, it'll float to the top. So I've got to get a lot of dirt on this to keep that from happening. I would assume this lip down here would definitely help prevent that from happening, because that's going to hold dirt on top. So hopefully it won't start raining first thing in the morning, because I don't know if I'm going to get this done. It's already probably 5:30 or so. I'm going to run out of time really fast, so hopefully I can get this done. All I've got to do is put on my T's on this one and inside there, and then I can go ahead and put the top back on and start backfilling. We are rapidly running out of time here. Got dark clouds of brewing. We've only just now started to backfill. Barry's bringing the dirt over. So what you gotta do here is walk along and just pack it down with your feet and push it down into the side here. That's all they say you're supposed to do. Walk around, pack it. You can use an excavator too to push it down, but I don't want to risk hitting it. So
When backfilling around the tanks, you want to make sure that you're not moving the tanks with each load of dirt that you put in. So what I'm having Barry do here is he's actually dumping on the edge of the pit and letting the dirt roll down in. Then I'm down there with a rake and a shovel pushing things around up to the tank. If you were to drop the dirt directly on or right around the tank, it may move it from side to side. It may get you out of level, and having to redig or dig things back up is really not a good option. You want to do it right and do it right the first time. It took us several hours to backfill up against the tank.
Just the next day, I think it's about time I get a new hat. There we go. Perfect. I'm going to try and get everything in here. I want to get a layer going over the top of each of these. I want to get my gravel in the pit there for that pipe coming out, some gravel under this one.
It's important that you don't drive on top of the tanks. Although these are made to withstand quite a bit of pressure, that skid steer is over 6,000 pounds and that just may collapse it. I also don't like putting dirt directly over the top of my pipes, so we're filling it around here with that quarter chip, which packs in nicely around it, and it lets the pipe flex a little bit back and forth. If you just put straight dirt on top, it could compress it, could move your pipe, it could bow your pipe, and having any bows in your line is not good because that will just collect your sewage.
Well, today we accomplished a pretty good amount. We got the tanks pretty much buried. I got to leave the lids exposed in case the inspector wants to look inside them. I took pictures and everything, but in case he wants to see, I've got them exposed. There's where my outlet will go over to the D box, distribution box, which will be somewhere over here, and then it will split out to the lateral field. Okay, I'm finally back out and ready to get busy. Cancer-proof hat. So I need to start laying this out, and I guess the first thing I'll do is come off. I'm not going to do the distribution box anymore, and the reason being is that the county wants me to tie all of the lateral lines together. And so the reason why I use a distribution box is, let's say this row is a little bit higher than that row, a little bit higher than that row, so these are not level. Use a distribution box to control the water that goes to each one. It gives you, I think, about 4 to 5 inch elevation change going out of the box. So if you can picture this, inside the box there are little plastic pieces that you rotate, and there's a hole in the top. So as you rotate that piece around, that hole could be up here or the hole could be down here somewhere. And you do that, you put fluid in your in the distribution box, and you adjust those levers or those levelers until every single one is at the same, so the water's flowing out at an even rate. Then from there, when it goes out into your lateral lines, it could be, each lateral line could be at a different elevation. Well, because the county wants me to tie everything together as if it were perfectly level, there's no point in doing that, because all my lines now have to be level, the same all the way across the board. So there's no point in having a distribution box anymore.
I measured out the length and width of all of my lateral lines to make sure that when I dug them, not only was I straight, but I was getting it as wide as I needed to be. This portion, I knew I was going to hit a lot of rock. It was the most shallow area of the whole lateral field. So you can really see here why we had to raise the level of the lateral field. Otherwise, the whole dig would have gone like this. The first 50 foot was nothing but rock. So of course your affluent cannot float or cannot flow through the rock. It would just hit it, and then it would find a way up somewhere else in the yard, and then you just end up with a stinky yard. So by doing it this way, I've got plenty of dirt and elevation for the affluent to filter in through before it gets down into the rock, and then if it flows out, it should be fine. Large rocks also come into play because you don't want them resting against your pipe anywhere. They move and shift between the seasons, and it can break your pipe.
So basically what I did is I got the transom set up over there, and when I ran my first elevation, just happened to be 4 feet. So I wanted to be 18 inches down. So I actually had this up at 5'6", and then I ran down the trench with it and made sure my depth was good. So now what I'm going to do is fill it up with rock. Some of these areas is deeper, but I'm not any shallower than I need to be. So I lowered this down my 4 inches from my 6 down to my 2. So now when I fill in rock, I can rake it until this beeps exactly at my 5'2". Then I'll lay my pipe in. Then I'll pour in more rock, and then I'll set this down 8 more inches. So that would get me to 4'6", and then I got 6 inches of soil on top of that, which put me back to 4 feet.
It's always good to have all your material laid out, especially when you're working by yourself. You don't want to be constantly running back and forth trying to find different pieces you need.
Okay, I'm at the point now where I need to go ahead and get some rock in here. So I know that line's not perfectly straight. It'll get leveled and straightened out when I put the rock in. This end piece isn't on yet. I haven't glued this fitting where it transitions from Schedule 40 down to regular drain pipe. Drain pipe is really thin. Schedule 40 is a lot thicker. The reason why I ran Schedule 40 through here is that if anyone's going to drive through here, it's going to be right through this area. I want to make sure I didn't get my pipes crushed at all. Although it's probably unlikely, I'm still trying to be safe. A couple extra bucks makes it worthwhile. So I've got to really get my rock out here to know where this is level at, and then I can fill that in and make sure I've got good slope. I have plenty of slope as it is. I really just make sure I've got a little bit of a belly right there, so I need to raise that up. The rest of it looks pretty good. I just need to get some rock in here so I know exactly where this needs to be level. Like, so it'll be level from this point all the way down. It'll be perfectly level down to that far end. Be perfectly level this way, and all lateral lines be level. So
again, here I like to use that quarter chip rock around my pipe. Not only does it make it really easy to level things, but also it allows your pipe again to move and shift with temperature changes, so your pipe doesn't break underneath the ground.
Leveling pipe with rock is really relatively easy. So once you throw some rock in there, you just basically lift it up a little bit, and as you lift it up, the rock falls underneath it and it levels it perfectly. So the hump I had down there, the low spot, is now gone. Comes out very level, and then actually not level, excuse me, actually has a really good drop. This first 20 feet, the last 15 feet actually drops just a little bit faster. So that's part of the reason why I put a Y down here too, is that I didn't want all the water rushing right past and shooting into this one side. Granted, it's all level and it shouldn't matter. You know, it should go down here and then eventually it'll fill up. Eventually it'll fill up the whole field. But putting that Y in there like that, as it should direct some of the fluid off this way too. If I had a T in there, it wouldn't do that. But you can see the beveled, how far in that dip goes. So as the water comes down, some should get pushed off into this direction as well.
In this first trench, I went through and leveled the gravel first and then put the pipe on top of it. You'll see later on how I ended up modifying this several times to make things go a little bit faster and a little bit smoother. This was probably the hardest method to do.
So one other thing I should probably do before I cover this up is I was going to have my inspection ports sitting out over here, but it makes more sense for me to cut this pipe and put that in right there. Reason being is if I ever need to auger this out for whatever reason, I can run this way, down that pipe, or down this Y. Okay, I got my inspection port in there. That'll rise up to just below grade level. You can dig it up and check it if you need to. And I got my 90-degree on down there, so I'm pretty much ready to go ahead and fill this one in. I'm going to run the level down it one more time just to make sure we're good and straight, although I really don't think we're going to have a problem. Then I'll go ahead and put 4 inches of rock on top of the pipe, lay down my weed barrier, and then go ahead and get this one buried. So I'm looking at doing here is I'm going to try a different method. I haven't glued it in down there yet. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to pour rock in. I know the pipe is low, so I'm going to go through and raise it up as I go, and then just throw a regular 4-foot level on it and see how well that works. I think it'd work fine. That's how I level most of the pipes, but Well, that was super easy compared to how I did that first run. So pretty much just pour it in a couple piles and level it off those piles. Now the only trick is to pour the rock in around it. You know, these areas don't have anything without messing the pipe or hitting the pipe. So I'll go ahead and fill in these gaps and then check my level one more time and then pour the rock on top. And then I will use the laser level to make sure that I've got that top where it needs to be. I went ahead and did one of these 80 footers by putting it all together and then doing the rock thing, relay in the trench and raise it up. Worked just fine. So that last, that west side there went really quickly doing that. And it's working here, so I'm going to keep doing it. Oh, let's see. I'm going to get ready to start digging my next line. Got this one all covered up, ready to go. So that's a 3-foot wide trench there. And then I'm going to take the dirt from this one and dump it onto this one. My only concern is it's so dry, everything is just, it's just hard clods of mud. So hopefully it won't rip this mesh stuff up. It's says extra strength, but it rips pretty easy.
Modify my method as I went along ended up helping out quite a bit in the end. This method of digging out one trench and putting your dirt on the adjacent trench sped things up enormously and really cut down on the amount of labor. Another advantage it has is that it leaves my workspace completely open so I can lay out pipe like I am here without having a big mound of dirt in the way. So placing little piles of rock in here like this is the easiest way to level your pipe. You just basically drop some rock here and there, lift it up as you go with a level until it gets to where it needs to be. Then just drop dirt around or a rock along the whole surface. Here I'm smoothing it out before I put the felt paper on top, which will keep any dirt and debris out of my pipe.
In case you're wondering how I know how all the pipes are lined up, is that the print line. If I line up that print line, I know that my holes underneath are at 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So that means through the bottom of the pipe, there is going to be holes on both sides at an even amount. And what this does is allow the water, so right about there is where it'll be, so water can flow down the middle around the entire system, and then it will eventually get up high enough to leak out those holes. I'll pull this back. And then when that happens, it goes into your gravel, and then it spreads out or along the however wide your gravel is, and then weeps into the ground. And the idea is that that filters out any of the bad stuff before it gets anywhere else. So that's that. Oh, the felt paper on top, or the weed barrier, is to keep the dirt that you put on top of it from eventually soaking in and working its way through the gravel and then down into your pipe and clogging your pipe. I've heard that some people don't think it does anything. They don't think it's necessary, and other people are really sold on it. So, but it's what the county told me to do, so that's what I'm going to do. So as I continue to work, I keep modifying what I'm doing to make things a little easier. So on this trench, I ran my pipe right into the end first. The other last two I assembled out here and then kicked them into the trench and then set them up to the main line. So now I'm assembling it in the trench, and the nice thing about this is that before I didn't have anything to push against, it was just a loose pipe. So when I tried to push these two fittings together, I have to try and hold this one in place. Well, now that it's tied in back there, it's not going anywhere. It's making it a lot easier. It just saves me a step from pushing it into the trench also.
Finally, on the last trench, it took me about 2 full days to do the lateral lines, and the whole project really took me several weeks. I'd never installed a septic system before. I had to go get licensed with the county, which was pretty much just taking a simple multiple choice test, which wasn't very difficult. And I believe I had to pay about $275, I believe, for the test, and then to get the permit and everything. This was probably one of the hardest parts, was getting everything on the far end, or on the end closest to the house, buttoned up and put together, just because all the pieces are now kind of rigid and stuck in place, but went through pretty smoothly. The final part, of course, is to cover up your lateral field. You want to have about 6 inches of topsoil on top of it so that the vegetation can grow, and the vegetation, of course, roots will get down. It will wick out the fluid down inside there and help keep your system healthy. But everything went pretty smooth. I'm pretty happy with the results.
I don't think this could have gone any better today. I've got everything covered up. As you can see behind me, I got a chance of storms coming in. It was no storms at all. Now they're saying 80% chance. There's already some popping up north of us. So I went ahead and got everything smoothed out. Now I've got to come back still and get some of this. You can see it's like, you know, these humps where where the lateral lines are. So those may settle down a little bit, but I'm sure I'm going to need to bring in more dirt. I've got about maybe 2 more loads there in the back that I worked up. But if we get a big rain on this, we'll get a chance to see what it's like. You can drive on your lateral line, especially when they're new, as long as you're going perpendicular to them. You don't want to go parallel right down them, but you can go perpendicular. This is very dry dirt. It's not going to sink. It's not going to be mushy. And plus, I've got tracks on the skid steer, which distributes the weight. So they say you don't want to use wheeled vehicles. Like if I didn't have tracks on that skid steer, I probably wouldn't have done what I just did. I probably would have used the Mini X, which would have taken a lot longer. But everything has a slight slope this way, which is what I wanted. And then the slope comes down from this direction and this direction, and then hits into this little valley here. And we'll go straight out to where the pond may be one of these days. I have to say my only concern is just the side along the road. If we get some seepage through there before I get a chance to build that retaining wall, and then put some drain tile down through there as well. So who knows when I'll get to that. You know, here's the pipe. It's supposed to be 10 foot away from a tree. We're about, that looks, well, the pipe's there, but the line's actually about right here. So 10 foot would be about right here. So about probably 12 foot from that tree, but my dirt definitely ends before the 10 foot marker. My retaining wall is going to be built up on the back side of these trees coming up, and then I'll backfill against that wall. So we'll probably end up taking this hedge tree out and that hedge tree out, just because I don't want hedge apples falling everywhere. Kind of a pain in the butt. But all in all, went pretty good. So I expect the water to get all diverted around. Looks like I probably need to put a few loads more in here to raise that up. Make sure it flows away properly, but we get this good rain, that'll help soak and let it pack in a little bit. And after that, we've got another whole week of dry weather. So, the shirt was black. Just look at my hands. Just a little dirty. But yeah, so get this rain and let it soak in a little bit, and hopefully let this settle and pack down a little bit, and then I'll have to come through and probably get some more dirt on it to raise the low spots. But all in all, it looks pretty good. So now we can get a toilet.